That probably sounds heartless, but grief and I had never been particularly close. My grandfather, Henry Calloway, had been a quiet man, distant, precise, and sharp as the mountains he loved. He rarely called, rarely visited. And yet, when the lawyer phoned me 3 weeks after the funeral, his voice carried the kind of weight that changes a life. "You've inherited something substantial, Mr. Calloway." Substantial turned out to be an understatement. The property was called Silver Ridge Retreat, a 70-acre mountain resort tucked deep in the Rockies outside Aspen, Colorado. My grandfather had purchased it in the late 1980s and apparently never sold it. I stared at the photographs the lawyer slid across the table. Snow-covered cabins, pine trees, a central lodge with a massive stone fireplace, and a breathtaking overlook that made the world seem smaller and quieter. "It's operational?" I asked. The lawyer adjusted his glasses. "As far as records indicate." Records. That word would haunt me later. 2 weeks later, I was driving up a winding mountain road in a rented SUV, tires crunching over frost. The sign appeared suddenly, Silver Ridge Retreat. Private property. The letters were freshly painted. That surprised me. If the property had been sitting untouched for years, why did it look maintained? As I drove through the gates, I noticed something else. Cars. Several of them. Cabins with lights on. Smoke rising from chimneys. And people, guests, walking between buildings, laughing, carrying ski gear. My heart thudded. This wasn't abandoned. This wasn't dormant. This place was running. Inside the main lodge, warmth hit me instantly. The fireplace roared. A receptionist sat behind a polished wooden desk. She smiled. "Welcome to Silver Ridge. Checking in." "I'm not checking in," I said slowly. "I'm the owner." Her smile faltered, then recovered in a way that felt rehearsed. "Oh, you must mean you're with the HOA board." "Huh? There's a homeowners association." I asked. "Yes, of course. Silver Ridge HOA oversees operations and maintenance." "Who exactly owns this resort?" I asked. She hesitated. Then she said something that made my stomach drop. "The Silver Ridge Homeowners Association." That night, I stayed in one of my own cabins free of charge. I insisted. I opened my grandfather's old documents and began digging. The truth surfaced like something ugly rising from dark water. 5 years ago, my grandfather had suffered a stroke. Records showed he'd become legally incapacitated for nearly 8 months. During that period, the HOA board, originally formed to manage shared amenities for cabin owners, had filed amended operating agreements. Somehow, quietly, cleverly, they'd inserted clauses granting them temporary operational control of the resort's rental program. Temporary, except it had lasted 5 years. And according to booking logs I accessed through the front desk system, they'd been collecting rental income the entire time. I did quick math. Average nightly cabin rate, $450 average occupancy, 70% annually number of cabins, 22 even conservatively. They had collected well over $3. $5 million in 5 years. Not $1 had reached my grandfather. Not $1 had come to me. The HOA board met every Thursday evening in the conference room overlooking the valley. I walked in uninvited. There were 5 of them. Douglas Pierce, president, Marlene Keats, treasurer, Victor Hale, legal liaison, 2 others who avoided eye contact. Douglas looked up first. "You can't just walk in here." "I believe I just did," I replied calmly. I laid the inheritance papers on the table. I own Silver Ridge Retreat. The land, the lodge, the cabins. All of it. Silence. Then Marlene leaned back in her chair. "The HOA has operational authority." "You had temporary authority," I corrected, "during a documented medical incapacity. That ended 5 years ago." Victor folded his hands. "The agreement was ratified." "By whom?" I asked. "A man recovering from a stroke." Douglas's jaw tightened. "You don't understand how complicated resort management is." I smiled. "I understand numbers." And I slid printed revenue statements across the table. "You've been collecting rent for 5 years. That revenue belongs to me." They didn't panic. That's what worried me. Douglas steepled his fingers. Litigation would be messy. Expensive. You might find it easier to leave management as is. There it was. A polite threat. You're suggesting I walk away for millions. I'm suggesting, Marlene said softly, that mountain communities are close-knit.
Courts favor stability.
I stood. You've mistaken me for someone who scares easily. Then I delivered the line I'd rehearsed in my head since doing the math. You owe me 5 years of rent, and I intend to collect. Back in the city, I hired a forensic accountant. What she uncovered made my blood boil. The HOA had created a separate management that funneled rental income into accounts labeled Maintenance Resa, paid themselves administrative stipends, renovated their personal cabins using resort funds, and the best part, they had assumed my grandfather would never recover fully enough to contest it. They had underestimated 2 things. He recovered enough to preserve ownership. He left everything to someone with nothing to lose. An avalanche. Breach of fiduciary duty. Fraudulent enrichment.
Une autorise de commerciale exploitation.
Within 2 weeks, I received calls. First from Victor, suddenly less confident. We may be open to a settlement discussion. Then from Marlene. Douglas pushed for most of this. Perhaps we can restructure. Interesting. Divide and conquer had begun. Guests began noticing tension. Word spread that ownership was under dispute. Online reviews mentioned management instability. Bookings slowed. The HOA panicked. Because suddenly, the income stream they had quietly relied on was at risk. That's when Douglas made his mistake. He tried to sell the management LLC's operational rights to an outside investor. Except he didn't legally own those rights.
I did.
And my lawyer obtained an injunction within 48 hours. Once subpoenas were issued for financial records, cracks turned into fractures. Victor resigned first. Then one of the silent board members cooperated in exchange for immunity from civil damages. Bank transfers were traced. Personal expenditures documented. By month 4 of litigation, the numbers were undeniable. They didn't just owe me $3. $5 million. With interest, damages, and legal penalties, it was closer. We met in a downtown conference room. Douglas looked 10 years older. The agreement was simple. Immediate resignation of the HOA board, dissolution of the management LLC, structured repayment plan secured by liens on their personal properties, transfer of full operational control to me. Marlene signed first. Victor avoided my eyes. Douglas hesitated, then signed. And just like that, 5 years of quiet theft ended. 6 months later, Silver Ridge was thriving again. I hired professional hospitality managers, rebuilt the website, introduced transparent financial reporting, offered discounted stays to long-term community residents. For the first time, the resort felt honest and profitable. Ironically, revenue increased 18% after restructuring. Turns out, when you're not skimming millions, business runs smoother. Before he died, my grandfather had written one final note. I found it tucked in the deed envelope. It read, "Trust the mountains. They reveal what people try to bury." He had suspected something. Maybe not the full scale, but enough. And maybe that's why he left it to me. Not just land, not just cabins, but a fight worth winning.